Tonight I have Miss Deidre with me from her business page, Deidre and Friends. Before we get started, tell us about yourself.
Where do you want to start? We've already got it out there. I am a recovered addict, and I'm also a domestic violence survivor. What do I do with my life these days?
Hmm.
I'm a psychic medium, and I am a certified holistic therapy practitioner.
Okay, so you're psychic. Can you give us the winning numbers to the Powerball?
No, no,
Okay, so you
it
said,
doesn't work that way. I wish it did, dude. Let me tell you.
oh man, but so you say you were you overcame. You became sober. So how long has that been?
You know what? I don't count days. I go by blocks of life.
Okay.
If I look back on that, I think I finally probably got my feet firmly planted outside
Hmm.
the active addiction lanes in my early 30s. So I
Okay.
have been sober for a little over 25 years.
Oh, that's nice. That's definitely nice.
Yeah.
So, and this was all in Illinois.
Um, Illinois, Colorado.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to say because I mean I know you're in Illinois, so you're originally from Illinois, or you're from
I am
Colorado.
originally from Illinois. I have lived in Denver, California, Florida. I think that's most of it. I might be missing one, but that's most of it. Every
Okay.
time I leave the state of Illinois, I end up coming back. I'm still sometimes not real sure why, but
Okay. So, okay, so you said you were 25 years. So, what made you stop? Was there like some type of critical situation that happened, or you just decided one day you just woke up and said, "I'm done"?
um, what made me stop the final time or what made me stop the first time? Because we all know if we've been down this road,
Hmm.
you try more than once
Right.
and you don't stop till you're ready. The first time that I quit was in response to a physical beating. So the addiction cycle is tied to the domestic violence cycle. Um, when I finally stopped for good, it was the result of a head-on collision. And I wasn't at fault, but I was driving and we were on our way to meet the guy.
Oh, wow. A
Yeah.
head-on collision. Everybody walked away fine, or
Everybody walked away fine. I had a really good busted up foot. Do you remember those pictures of oh, I can't think of her name at the moment for some reason it just jumped out of my head. But she was always like this, showing the side of her face with the bruising from her beating.
I don't remember.
That's what I looked like from the car accident. But I busted up my foot real good.
Mm. So you
Yeah.
busted up your foot, and that was just that time. It was just I'm done.
I needed to be. I mean, we get where we when we get to be ready to quit when we hit bottom. And I don't
Right.
know that I would say that I hit bottom, but what else is going to look like bottom to an active addict who gets into a car accident like that in the middle of the night in 30 below weather
Oh, wow.
on her way, yeah, to pick up.
Okay, I
There,
understand.
there I mean, there was an aftermath that kind who was not part of that domestic violence cycle, but was my partner in using. And
Hmm.
I knew that I couldn't stop using
Hmm.
without leaving that partner.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. We're actually still in touch occasionally. He's married to someone else. I'm married to someone else, but every once in a while, like he was diagnosed with cancer late last year. He's doing very well. But we still exchange info every once in a blue moon
Mm,
from a
mm.
distance.
So you stopped. So it was just stopping. You went to a program after that.
I did it and I didn't. It's interesting. There were times I tried to go to AA, but in my mind at the time, alcohol wasn't the primary problem. So
Okay.
alcohol wasn't a good fit.
Okay.
And I went to NA. And NA didn't seem, I wasn't ready for group work, to be honest,
Hmm.
is probably what that boiled down to. But I did try both. I did do some private therapy for a while
Hmm.
and on and off the wagon, right? I avoided clubs. I was a bartender. I was a karaoke host. I taught line dancing. I avoided clubs altogether. I didn't think that I could handle being in that environment without going back to my old patterns. Was a bartender when I was using, and it was a long time before I was able to step back into that world, even as a customer.
Mm. So you just didn't step back into that world. So
I
now
can't now.
you out of this world. So you were saying that you overcame domestic violence too. So after you became sober, was this part still going on, or was this all a part of what was going on when this was happening?
You know, I don't know if anybody's ever known a dry drunk. Just because we quit using the substance
Hmm.
doesn't mean that the characteristics of a user drop off without
Right.
the work. So I was still, because I was still where I was in my mind and in my emotional patterns, but I wasn't using, I was still attracting people into my world who had those same characteristics and some of those same emotional patterns. And it wasn't until I realized that I was part of the problem,
Hmm.
my patterns were part of the problem, um, that I learned to find my way out. And at the time, I was living with a very angry, emotionally and mentally abusive, active alcoholic.
Mm.
Well, when you live with an alcoholic, it's really hard to not join in. So I had started for a while when I was with him drinking every night after work, not to the same extent that I would have in the past, but
Hmm.
it became a part of my pattern again. And it wasn't just the drinking that had to change. It was my attitude toward things,
Okay.
my vulnerability, right? My assuming everything coming toward me was an attack. And I'm not going to say that there weren't attacks, verbal attacks. There wasn't intimidation, like lurking in doorways, just staring me down
Mm.
or accusing me of going places to do things that I absolutely was not doing. Right. Oh, I'm going to
Right.
go meet my girlfriend for coffee. And that led to a 35-minute me placating his insecurities. And I finally went, I'm like, well, come with us. But I had to change those patterns. It wasn't my job
Right.
to fix other people. It was my job to fix myself and do that deep work that allowed me to shed layers. And when you do that kind of deep work and you think you've got the layer done, yeah, the layer's done, but it'll come back later and you can address it from a different perspective and a different angle.
Okay. So how did you do that? How do you address it from a different angle?
Well, I had the therapist the one time, and she was amazing. We made tremendous strides, and I stayed sober for a little while, or stayed clean and sober for a little while. Um, a lot of that work I did on my own, which
Okay.
sounds probably completely backward, but that's what worked.
Well, no, it doesn't sound backwards because at the beginning, it at the beginning of the day or end of the day, whatever you want to say, however you want to say this, the phrase, it starts with you
Yeah,
because it doesn't matter. I mean, I've known people that go to these meetings and they just walk right back out. They check themselves out and they
sure.
go do things that they not supposed to do. No guys that show up to these meetings already, you know, in the mix already. They leave these meetings and go get back in the mix. I mean, it depends on what you are in these meetings for. If it's really
Right,
just for you to get yourself help, then you got to be there for yourself. But some guy,
right,
you might get a DUI and they go there. I just got to take this so I can pass this class. So I can get back on the road. They go do what they got to do.
right. None of us are ever going to stop our patterns, whichever patterns those may be, until we choose that it's
Right.
time to make it happen. And that's when it sticks. And sometimes we make the conscious choice to break the pattern, and then we start doing the deep work and we get triggered and we'd fall back into old habits because we're numbing or we're avoiding or we're hiding. Um, Gabor Mate is a mental health public figure that I follow fairly often. And it's the question isn't why the behavior,
Right.
it's why the pain. What are
Right.
we running from? And in my case, I didn't know I needed to be running. I was born into a family where that my father, my biological father, was an alcoholic and a very
Mhm.
angry one at that. So I learned from a very young age to stay small, to stay safe. He was never physical with us outside of things like tickling. People don't understand that tickling can be a physical abuse. But the mental and the emotional and seeing the outbursts and being afraid. Um, in fact, something from those days just came up in therapy for me within the last month and a half. And I'm like, wow, I had no idea that I was afraid to speak out sometimes or give my opinion or provide facts because I remembered this very angry man yelling and pounding his fist on the table and throwing the spoon across the kitchen because my sister spelled a word wrong at the dining table.
Mm,
She's 4 years older than I. So those kinds of things were happening with her before I was old enough to have them happen with me, but I was still there and I was still a part of the energy. So I had to learn whether or not at some point I had to start taking measure of when I felt triggered. I had to start asking myself, okay, am I reacting to this moment or am I reacting to something in the past? I
correct.
didn't know any different. I didn't know that that wasn't right. If that's what you're exposed to from in the womb for however many years after that, to you and to me at that time, that wasn't not normal. That wasn't not right. That wasn't not love.
Well, we got a question. So,
Cool.
was you do you think the alcohol caused the insecurities, or was the drinking a way to suppress the insecurities? And where did the
Oh,
insecurities stem from, if
that,
that was the case?
that's a great question. I can say now that it was all about insecurity, a need for validation, a need to feel wanted. Um, yeah, definitely the insecurity came first.
Mm. So the need to feel wanted. So even though it was going on, with this guy, it just that you just felt wanted. You just didn't want to be alone, and that plays back to you said with your dad, where you just felt small and alone.
Yes, we learn to stay small, to stay safe at whatever point in our life that we're experiencing this mayhem.
Mhm.
Um, we learn to keep our mouths closed. We learn we don't have a voice. But because it gets taken away in place of safety,
Correct.
it's all, for me, it was all very intricately tied and it was layers and layers of years. Like my biological dad was an angry alcoholic
Hmm.
who left when I was 4, and
Okay.
appropriately so. But I was 4 years old. I didn't know better. I couldn't process. I had support, but I just didn't know how to utilize it. And mom was still getting out of whatever ramifications she had from that experience. So it can be hard to separate the motivation until you
Hmm.
start doing the work.
Okay. So then the motivation came, and you started doing the work. So you go to these
Yeah.
meetings, and now you're
Like
getting yourself better.
oh yeah, I mean, like, come on, that was normal for me, right? I didn't know any better. So I would seek out men who were
Right.
just like my biological father. I spent probably 20 years dating angry alcoholic or addicted men. So
So
I
now,
kept myself in that cycle by those choices.
what is it like?
So much more supportive, so
Well, I
much
hear
more
cats in the
compassionate,
background. I hear cats in
so
the
much calmer.
background.
Do I know?
I said I hear cats in the background.
Yes,
So
my cat's in the hallway. She can come in anytime she wants, I think. That's his thing. Um, it's so much different,
okay.
incredibly supportive. We're always gonna have times that we don't feel heard, but when we don't feel heard, one of my questions is, okay, but did I express my need? Did I use my voice?
So you express your needs. So no more physicality.
Oh, heck no. Mm-mm. Not
Okay.
in that was the one and only was the one time. That was it. But really, which way is more? And I don't know that there's truly an answer to this question. Which has a larger impact on an individual, the physical, the mental, or the emotional? They all have an impact.
Uh, I'm gonna answer your question. You know what? I'm gonna say actually, I think it's the mental, because the physical, the bruises and the scars can actually be covered up by something and they go away. But the
Mhm.
mental, it's always inside of you, and PTSD and things of that nature. You're always gonna remember something may trigger you. You may remember that. So I think it's more of the mental than the physical. I mean, what's the word? With children, sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me. So,
Wrong. Wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
so I
I don't disagree with what you said, by the way.
no, I just think more so just the mental, because whatever you're doing, as far as if you're in a deep dream realm or something in that nature, that can play a whole thing, because the mind is
Right.
actually the most powerful. The mind is the most powerful thing behind the tongue. So I
Right.
think actually that is more traumatizing than actual physical.
I agree to an extent. And hey, Candy, thanks for tuning in. Part of the issue with that, though, is you can't see the mental or emotional wound,
You're right.
but you can see the physical. So it
Hmm.
can be easier to find support
Hmm.
or a port in the storm when you're carrying the physical scars, the physical bruises.
Correct.
But
But
then, you know, I lied about it once or twice, you know. Oh, how did you get that black eye? Oh, I forgot to duck. I heard a bar fight start.
mhm.
He was in a band, right? Heard a bar fight start, and I forgot to duck.
Someone said hi to you,
They bought it.
Candy. Candy's
Yeah.
they said hi. Okay,
Yep.
so
Yep.
another question. When did you come to realization that you need to break the generational curse, or rather when did you realize that life you were living wasn't normal at all?
You know, two questions, and I love them both, and they are really kind of separate. So you did
Hmm.
that pretty well. When did I realize I had to break the generational curse? I'm not sure that I understood it was a generational pattern or epigenetic
Hmm.
um, at the time. I have only recently come to start understanding that pattern
Hmm.
in the last, say, 6, 8 years. So it was
Okay.
never really an intention to break a general curse or generational curse, but it was an intention to get myself safe.
Correct.
And then when did you realize the life you were living wasn't normal at all? I think it was when you finally beat the crap out of me. I had a
Okay.
cop look at me from across the treatment room
Hmm.
and say, "Are those choke marks on your neck?"
Hmm.
And the only answer I had was, "I don't know. I've been afraid to look."
Wow.
I got home. Um, when I finally got out of the house, his elderly parents were sleeping upstairs. No one was coming to rescue me. Picked up the phone to call 911. I was sure he was going to pick up that phone and bash me upside the head with it. He didn't. When I
Mm.
left the house, there were 3 concrete steps up to the front porch. He held the door open, and I was afraid to walk through the door because I was certain he was going to put his foot in my back and just push me down those stairs. But he
Mm.
didn't. You know, they say the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is when you're leaving
Hmm.
because they know they've lost control at that point. So we were already past that. I was going to leave the house and go to the police station, but I couldn't remember where it was.
And this was in Illinois, or this was in Denver
Colorado.
or Colorado?
Um, I finally made it home and I called 911, but I
Hmm.
heard a key in the door. And I'm like, oh, he's coming in the door. I got to go. And I hung up.
Mm.
This was years ago. We didn't have like call tracing. And if you call 911 and hang up, they show up anyway. Um, so with the short version of it is I had human bites, missing chunks of hair, gouge marks around my eyes, and choke marks on my neck, and a
Okay.
concussion. So I could
Mm.
not. He got the heel of his hand in the side of my face. I couldn't
Mm.
even open my mouth enough to get my toothbrush in my mouth the next day.
Damn.
So I actually, and I understand this can be a rarity. So I think I can safely say I'm proud of myself, how I handled things in ER when a friend took me in, because I told them his name, I told them where he lived, I told them where it happened, the police, and I told them, oh well, this is probably where he's hanging out tonight. If he's not at this bar, he's at that bar. He's a musician.
Okay.
Um, so I think that's really kind of when I figured out this isn't normal.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, it's not. It's not normal. It's not
Right.
normal. But you have to see it for yourself. And well, I don't say I want to know, but was there anybody outside of, friends or people looking in like this is not normal, and you just chose to ignore it?
That's a good question. I'll get back to that in a second. I do see it. Um, Ask me the question again. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna take, but I was saying like somebody looking outside in, telling you this is not
Oh,
normal. Was there anybody like, no, this is not normal? Like you
um,
need to break away these chains, and you
I
just ignored it.
know. I know now that there were people who either knew or had an inkling that did and said nothing.
Okay.
We were a pretty tight circle. Um, in fact, when I made phone calls back down there, I came back up to Chicago. When I made phone calls back down there were legit straight up people who didn't believe any of it ever happened because they didn't see me after that.
Right.
I will say that the woman he dated
Hmm.
right after that, literally, I came back to Chicago about a week later at the most. Um, she and I and he were like the trio. And I heard from her very recently for the first time since. And the message I got was an apology
Right.
for not being a better friend at the time. And we had an amazing conversation. And we've already sworn up and down if I get back to Colorado or she gets back here or gets out here, we're going to have coffee.
Hmm.
But what I also learned is it was a darn good thing I took off when I did
Mm.
because she had him arrested and she didn't back down and they went to court and he went to jail for attempted murder.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The murder part comes down to she was driving and he punched her in the face and broke her nose,
Mm.
but was I mean, he did a number on her nose. So that's where that attempted murder charge came from. So people don't necessarily always change.
Okay. Well, we got a
Leopards
couple.
don't change their spots, right?
No, they don't.
They
Okay.
can,
They
but not
they
everybody
can.
tries.
No, but hold on. Somebody said, how long did it take for you to feel like you were yourself once you left? You was yourself again once you left.
Loaded question. And I only say that because I can isolate it to a point. I only say that because I don't think I really had an opportunity to know who I was for a very long time. The domestic violence started in childhood.
Right.
Like, believe it or not, some people may be on board with this, some may not. We do absorb when we're in the womb, and we have our mother's DNA.
Hmm.
So we feel it and we get it. I did a past life regression in which I was not coming out of the womb because this was not what I signed up for. I was a forceps delivery. Um, but I think I'm really still on a journey to fully discover who I am. I think that's a never ending journey for most of us.
Right.
So that answers part of the question. How long did it take me to start feeling normal after that? After I came home, after I physically recovered and then worked on the mental and emotional recovery from that, I would literally say it took years.
Mm.
I dated other people who were very nice people. Um, but I would flinch, right? Somebody
Hmm.
reached to cup my face one night in a very kind, sweet manner, and I like totally backed away. And they felt awful.
Mm.
And so did I when I understood what happened.
That's the
So
mental.
that's well, it's also muscle memory.
Right.
So it was a very long time before I learned that I could be safe. Yeah,
Mm.
it took years.
And we have another one. What role do you think forgiveness plays in your healing? And have you forgiven those people that hurt you? And have you also, most importantly, forgiven yourself for what you allowed yourself to experience?
These questions are awesome, you guys. Thank you so much. You guys all, I can tell that your audience gets it. Um, yeah, I forgave him. I've forgiven my biological dad. And look, none of us can do any better than what we know. I can never blame my parents for the choices that I made because I made those choices and they did the best they could with what they had. Um,
Mm.
Got to take responsibility and accountability and know that doesn't come from a program's point of view. It comes from growing, developing, understanding myself, understanding why I made the decisions and the choices that I made. Have I forgiven myself? Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Mm.
work. That's work.
Okay. So, doing the work that you did for yourself and you see other young ladies or other young or women going through this, do you sit down and say, hold on, let me talk to you and, before this goes any further than it would needs to go? Do you
I
mentor
have.
these young women now?
I have. In fact, I had a couple through my second addiction phase that we used to run with. I went my way. I had my own place. I was clean, maybe not sober, but clean. And she would call me. They had
Hmm.
had a baby. They were getting married. And she would call me and say, "Hey, come and get me." And I would go get her and take her back to my place. But we had conversations. I'm like, just because he says, just because y'all are getting married doesn't mean anything's going to change.
Hmm.
And she had an opportunity to stay with me, bring the baby. Um, she wasn't ready, and that's okay. So yes, I have had those conversations. And sometimes if I just make it known in an appropriate way for the context,
Hmm.
a little bit about my experience, a little bit about my journey, sometimes they'll come to me and talk. It's a little bit different for me now because of what I do for a living. Um, I'm starting a new small group program in September. The
Hmm.
thing, my favorite population to work with, my dream population, is those who are starting to date again
Hmm.
or afraid to start to date again once they've removed themselves from a situation.
Hmm.
Because none of us believe when we're in those situations or as a result of those situations, or maybe that's how we got there, we don't believe we have a voice.
Right.
So that's what this next program is about, finding your authentic voice. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's not easy to allow yourself to safely express a need or to safely say, or to know that you can be safe when you say, "Hey, when this happened, I felt that. Let's talk about that. How can we work together?" And the other part of that too is, and I was guilty of this for a very, very long time, trying to control the environment to avoid triggers.
Right.
Yeah. Like blaming the person who triggered me. It's not their fault, man. Unless they knew the button was there and stepped on it on purpose.
Okay.
But it's
So,
my responsibility to handle those triggers.
right. So now all this is past. Now
Yeah.
you're a psychic medium now. Psychic phenomenon now.
Yeah. And it's funny because in the psychic and in the mediumship world, our lives become our library, or our lived experience becomes our library.
Trust me, I
So
know. I had a psychic medium on here in season three. From New Orleans. I understand.
so I often have clients who come to me for readings.
Hmm.
And just a couple weeks ago, I was shown my client sitting across from me, lying on the floor bleeding. And I
Mm.
didn't want to open the wound, but addressed it.
Right.
Not saying, "Oh, this is what I see," but, "Oh, okay." Um, so we attract things that we have experience with.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of cool.
Mm.
It comes through that way. I've had people apologize from the other side. Um, there's so much healing that can take place just in that aspect of my world.
Mm. I understand that.
But I also went through a whole other process of self-development and self-discovery in my training leading up to my certification.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily easy work ever, but shadow work is always something that we need to do for ourselves before we can be effective for other people.
Understand. Totally. 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 But this is the part of the show right here where we call this if you listen to the show, I mean, my viewers know this is the part called "I Be Damned," where people go on these crazy dates or something happens. Nobody dies, anything like that happens. It's funny, and we ask the viewers, the person on the show that day, how would you handle the situation? So they write in and say, first of all, I have a decent job, but I'm not wealthy. My wife has a job that she likes, but it doesn't pay her worth. Together, we're lower middle class, married for 2 years, and we never had a honeymoon. I pay all our expenses. I told my wife, who is very cheap and never pays for anything, that I want her to plan a weekend getaway for the two of us, and I want her to pay for it. She agreed. We're going to
Okay.
Jamaica. Long story short, she set us up on a pyramid scheme, MLM, multi level marketing.
No.
free trip where we had to listen to sales pitches all day for one night to stay in a rundown resort. I was furious and I asked, "Why are you so cheap? Money is to be spent." Wife, I married you for stability. When I marry for love, I may need money to live on. I filed for divorce. She's begging to save our marriage and splurge on a steak dinner. Forgive her or put a baby in her and leave. I'm leaving this marriage with something. And
I'll be damned.
yeah, that's crazy. Yes, that is wild.
I don't know that it's entirely fair to say that the thing that really opened his eyes was the reservation and the way that that trip played out.
Yeah, when you for one night to go to an MLM, that is crazy. That is definitely crazy.
And I've
So,
known other people who've done that, right? Knowing that they're going to have to go to like a half day presentation and then they get the
hmm
next 2, 3 days. Okay, if you do that with your eyes open, that's one thing. But did she know that that's what she had done? And if
I don't.
she did, shame on her for not sharing it and making the decision together.
Well, I mean, for him to say he wants to impregnate her to lead his marriage with something, nah, I
Yeah, that
can't.
ain't right either.
Nah, that's not right at all. But thank you for joining us, and may God bless you and keep you safe and all and
And
everything
you
that
as
you
well.
do. And sharing your testimony here on Amsterdam Talk is a powerful message for women all across the world who's going through this. So, once it comes out, this episode comes out on Friday on all platforms, they'll get a chance to hear your message and hopefully it can brighten them up and smarten them up to actually leave their situation if they're in a
Get
situation. Because
healthy.
at the end of the day, like you said, uh you walked away and the lady that came in that was in that trio, didn't back down and he caught a murder attempted murder charge.
Attempted murder charge.
Right. And it could
Yes, sir.
only live things. And I've always say when I get people on the show and they talk about, domestic violence, I say normally I think about it as this. You're only leaving out of here one or two ways. You're even leaving out of here getting buried or very, very, very hurt.
Unfortunately, sometimes that is the case. And it's scary because usually by then the victim has seen it coming and
Right.
oftentimes has tried multiple times to get assistance, to get help for looking for protection, and the system has failed. I'm not saying any system is perfect, but I think that
Mhm.
one is a little better than it was.
Right, right,
I hope it
right,
is, man.
right. So I mean, um, that's again, thank you for sharing your testimony and thank you for coming through Amsterdam Talk.
Yeah.
And talking to us. If you're looking for Miss Deidre, where can they find you at?
Oh my goodness. I am at www.deidrelynsanford.com. I just popped it in the private chat for you. I'm also on Facebook at Deidre and Friends. It's DEIDRE, Shift 7 and Friends. There is a business page by that name, and then there's also a private group by that name where we do Thursday Night Lives,
Thursday Night Live. See, she came on Wednesday, so tomorrow night. What time tomorrow night?
7 p.m. Central.
7 p.m. Central, so that's 8 p.m. over here Eastern, 6 in the Midwest, and 5 in the Pacific.
Thanks for popping that up.
So next week we have Grammy nominated, or well, Grammy Award winner. I'm sorry, Grammy, because I'm reading off the screen. Grammy Award winning from the Horizon Music Group, Jazz Fusion. Miss Tess will be in here this week, and Miss Zoe Tess is American songwriter and producer. She's written for
Nice.
Britney Spears, Miller Jams, a whole bunch of people that she created music for, and she wants to debut some new music on Amsterdam Talk next week. So
Sweet.
it'll be it won't even be an interview next week. It's going to be straight listening to music next week. So it's going to be a listening party. 7 p.m. Eastern time. Next week is the 28th, August 28th, 7 p.m. Eastern time. If you here, be here, listen to some music. Don't be there, beat me there, as we say. And we have another I Be Damn, preferably hopeless musical next week. So thank you, Ms.
Be
Deidre, for
awesome.
coming in. DeidreSanford.com, Deidre and Friends on Facebook. Again, if you missed this on YouTube, you can run it back right after we get off the air. But if not, you want to just listen to the audio, it'll be on Apple Music, Spotify, anywhere else you listen to your podcast at on Friday. I don't know what time Friday because I put it up different times, but just give or take about Friday afternoon.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
for
having
coming.
me on, Ren. Enjoy.
All right. So